All right. If there is a theme or a lesson for this weekend in baseball, it's be careful when you pull an intentional walk. We talked about Garrett Cole putting four fingers up because he didn't want to face Rafael Devers. Well, there were two intentional walks that happened today that were, shall we call them strange? The in the game between, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the box score here. And there were two wackadoodle games that happened on Sunday. The first one was between Milwaukee and Arizona. Milwaukee has been playing very good baseball under the radar. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Brewers and the year they're having with Chuck from Locked On Brewers coming up this week. But the Brewers have been playing very well, kind of under the radar. They haven't gone on long winning streaks, haven't gone any long losing streaks. Slow and steady is winning the proverbial race, and they are going to absolutely wind up winning the National League Central. And with their strength in pitching and how everyone else is up and down, I mean, could anyone doubt that they could win the pennant this year? They played a very weird game against the Diamondbacks. At one point, the Lavola, the manager of the Diamondbacks, walked Terang. All right, walked Bryce Terang, who is, he's a fine hitter, and he had a couple of hits and walks that day. But they intentionally walked him to face Jackson Chourio, who is a extra base machine, and he promptly hit a RBI triple to curse them in their ill-gotten intentional walk there. I will say that I believe both managers were paid off. That's the only explanation for how bizarre that game was and how bizarrely managed that game was, because the Brewers had an 8-run. They scored 8 runs in 3 innings to overcome an early deficit, and then went back and forth, and then they went to the bottom of the 10th with a 2-run lead, and they didn't call on Williams, their closer. So the Diamondbacks had weird management, the Brewers had weird management, and all of a sudden the Koenig, who I think played Chekhov on Star Trek, just let hit after hit after hit after hit, and suddenly the Brewers lost the game in the bottom of the 10th inning. And with that and the Mets walk-off loss, my Met fan friends are in absolute agony right now. But that Brewers-Diamondbacks game was bananas. And then the Mets wound up having an early lead, but wound up losing in a walk-off game to Philadelphia 2-1 in a game where Francisco Lindor had to leave in very early in the game. And he was, if there was talk of him, at least from Met fans, being the National League MVP instead of Shohei Ohtani. I am not one of those people. But if you take him out of this lineup, the Mets are in some serious trouble. But all my Met fan friends were absolutely apoplectic because the Mets lost, the Diamondbacks wound up winning, and there was a chance the Mets could have fallen out of the wild card chase, at least for a day, as we're here in late September, or mid-September, basically. There's only about a dozen games left. So any day you fall out is, shall we say, bad news. And of course, if you saw it, the Braves had an early 2-0 lead with Charlie Morton pitching and Walker Buehler, who has been dreadful pitching for Los Angeles. It looked like an easy win for Atlanta. But give Walker Buehler credit. He pitched well. And the Dodgers need as many good pitching performances as humanly possible because their starting lineup is held together with string and glue. And of course, that game went tied into the 9th inning with a nearly go-ahead home run by Will Smith turned into a triple. What did the Braves do? They pulled an intentional walk. Now, I understand their intentional walk. Their intentional walk was to Shohei Ohtani, the actual National League most valuable player. But here's the deal. Mookie Betts is batting behind him. So it's not like you got a schmuck batting behind Shohei Ohtani. And what did Betts do? He drove in a run. Then the absolute bottom dropped out for Atlanta because the Atlanta bullpen let up back-to-back home runs. Teoscar Hernandez, who I thought was hurt a couple of weeks ago, Edman got another home run, and then Muncy hit a home run. He has 15 homers. Hasn't Muncy been out a ton? So if you just casually looked at, the Dodgers blew the door off the dump with a 9-2 win, but it was actually a razor-thin game until they decided to walk Shohei Ohtani. So if you learn nothing, learn that, you know what? Maybe let's ease up on walking batters. Well, there's a lot of interesting games coming up starting today. The Tigers are holding on for dear life and trying to get into a postseason spot. And they're only 2.5 games behind Minnesota. They're playing Kansas City, who's trying to clinch a postseason spot. By the way, good for the Royals. They won their 82nd game. They were a 100-loss team last year, and they've clinched a winning record. It's a big day for the American League Central. The Tigers and Royals are playing each other, with the Tigers trying to get in. And the Twins are playing the Guardians. The Guardians are trying to clinch the division and cruise to an October. The Twins are hanging on by their fingernails. They're only 3 games up in the loss column of Detroit and Seattle. Seattle is off tomorrow, so we'll see what's happening there. The Dodgers and the Braves are playing the last of their game, and we're going to see what happens with the Mets as they're playing the Nats. The Brewers and the Phillies are playing what could be a National League Championship Series preview, and the D-backs and the Rocks are playing. And then what could be a World Series preview, you heard me, could be a World Series preview, Astros, Padres. And the thing that makes the Padres so dangerous is they're more or less at full strength now. Hear me out. You don't want to face them in a short series. Which brings us to our trivia question today. Who is the first player to hit 20 home runs for 2 different teams in the same year? In 1 year, one player hit 20 home runs for at least 20 home runs for 2 different teams. That's your trivia question. Put it right down there. And on Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, Instagram, or here on YouTube. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Holding up 4 fingers and waiting for the bad things to happen. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.